Hey, welcome back to YT Finance, and this is the channel where I went to business school so you didn't have to, and today we are talking about Palantir Technologies PLTR stock and how it can absolutely explode because they have an approaching catalyst, which is going to be their earnings report, which the company is set to release before the market opens on February 17th of 2022. And if Palantir beats their earnings per share, their revenues, or their free cash flow estimates, this could reflect very positively on the PLTR stock price, causing the stock price to surge upwards. Right now, the PLTR stock trades for around $13.80 per share, with the low-end analyst price target coming in at $13. The average 12-month price consensus among analysts for the PLTR stock is $20 per share, so it's already trading below the average price consensus among analysts, which indicates that PLTR is a fantastic buy right now, and the high-end price prediction is $25 per share. The reason why the $14.27 is here is because after the earnings report, that's what we want to see the PLTR stock price break above, because currently the Palantir stock price is facing resistance at $14.27, and if the PLTR stock price can raise above and break $14.27, this would become the new support level instead of a resistance level, which means that it would be very hard and difficult for the PLTR stock to fall below $14.27 once it breaks this resistance level, and that's really what we want. We want to see the stock to start to uptrend again, and this catalyst could do exactly that. So for more PLTR stock news videos, remember to go and smash that like button right now, comment down below your thoughts and your price prediction for the PLTR stock and any of their forecasts for their revenues, earnings, or cash flows down below. Subscribe if you are new, and without further ado, let's get right into today's stories. So today we're going to be going over the latest forecasts specifically for their upcoming earnings report in regards to the revenue and free cash flows and how this can positively impact the PLTR stock price and why I think the PLTR stock price is actually going to start reversing because of this amazing catalyst. We're also going to talk about their full year 2022 revenue and free cash flow estimates, which is going to make investors extremely bullish on this overall company. So without further ado, let's get right into those metrics. I personally think, along with the author of this article, thinks that the PLTR stock is a fantastic buying opportunity right now due to how much the PLTR stock has actually dropped as of late. It's actually near its one-year lows right now, which to me provides a fantastic opportunity for aggressive long-term investors to get into this very innovative company. On top of this, their approaching earnings report on February 17th before market opens provides a fantastic catalyst for investors to make money off of the PLTR stock if they decide to invest before the earnings report. The reason why the author of this article thinks that the PLTR stock price is going to surge is because he thinks that Palantir is going to beat their revenues and free cash flow estimates, and I also do as well. Palantir has consistently beat revenues and their forecasts for EPS and their cash flows consistently for the last 4 to 5 quarters. So now let's go over what analysts currently forecast for this upcoming earnings report, which are going to be the numbers we need to beat to experience a PLTR stock price increase. So we're going to be looking at their Q4 of 2021 revenue guidance and their adjusted operating margin, as well as the full year 2021 revenue estimates paired with their full year 2021 free cash flow projections. So right now, analysts currently have projections for Palantir's revenue forecasts for the Q4 of 2021, with revenues coming in at $418 million, which would imply around a 7% quarter-over-quarter increase, which is fantastic news. But we as investors want to see Palantir beat $418 million for revenues because this is going to provide us fantastic opportunity for the PLTR stock price to surge. The same goes for their adjusted operating margin for Q4 of 2021, which currently sits at around 22%. So in a perfect world, we would want to see Palantir actually beat and exceed this estimate according to analysts. However, even if they match this forecast of a 7% revenue growth and a 22% increase in adjusted operating margins, because it means they are growing quarter over quarter and year over year at a fantastic rate. For their full year 2021 revenues, analysts forecast that the company will bring in $1.53 billion, which means that the company actually grew their revenues by around 40% year over year, which is fantastic news. This actually already beat management's projections of a 30% CAGR or compounding annual growth rate for the year. So just getting to 40% from 30% already technically counts as a revenues beat. However, the author of this article thinks that they can actually still beat $1.53 billion for the year, and I do too. Lastly, we're going to talk about their free cash flows, and the reason why the free cash flow is very important is because analysts actually use this to calculate some of their price targets and price predictions. So if their free cash flows increase, this means that these price targets all will have to increase as well. So in an ideal world, we would want to see Palantir Technologies Technologies bring in over $400 million of free cash flow for the full year of 2021. So for the remainder of this article, we're going to discuss how Palantir can beat their revenue forecasts and how they can exceed their projections for their free cash flows, and we will tell you why this can happen, why this could be reflected in the overall stock price, and what the new metrics and forecasts are, specifically what this author of this article is thinking for what are the actual and true metrics and statistics that Palantir is going to bring in their approaching earnings report. The main reason for the author's bullishness, and mine as well, and I've been saying this for over 4 months now, is I am very excited for Palantir's commercial revenue segment. I think eventually their commercial segment is actually going to exceed and pass their government clients by a long shot. This is the segment that is going to make Palantir profitable. Their government clients are going to give them stable contracts and consistent revenue while the company continues to scale their commercial segment. And it's their commercial segment that's truly going to transform this company into a profitable company, in my personal opinion. And the author of this article 100% agrees with me. The author of this article says that Palantir is growing their revenues so well that it's actually going to exceed their revenue forecasts and their free cash flow forecasts for the upcoming earnings report. And this is mainly due, he says, to Palantir's momentum that they have gained in their commercial segment, and I completely agree with him. If the author of this article is correct, this could result in a major reevaluation of Palantir shares and what the company is currently worth right now, which would cause the stock price to surge. This also means that their full year 2022 revenue estimates as well as their earnings are also supposed to impress investors. Currently, the author thinks Palantir Technologies in the fourth quarter is going to bring in around $425 million worth of revenues, which represents around a $7 million increase from the current estimates and projections according to analysts. He also thinks that they're going to increase their adjusted operating margin between 28 to 30%, which would be a huge increase from the guided 22%, which we just talked about. So if Palantir Technologies can deliver a revenues beat on top of adjusted operating margin increases from 22% all the way up to 28% or 30%, this would be fantastic news, not only for investors, but for the overall company. However, this is just the beginning, because Palantir has signed a plethora of new clients throughout the entire year. For instance, Palantir added around 64 new clients year over year, which would indicate around 21 new contracts, clients, partnerships, or agreements per quarter. This means that Palantir Technologies is consistently growing their overall customer base, which will in turn increase their revenues, their free cash flows, and hopefully allow Palantir to eventually reach profitability. This means that the momentum for Palantir is just starting to build right now, and if the momentum gets past the tipping point, it could actually cause a stock reversal, which means that the PLTR stock will stop downtrending and actually start an uptrend. Palantir is consistently showing fantastic revenue growth, specifically for their commercial clients. Even their average revenue per customer has increased dramatically. So far, the average top 20 customers spent around $41 million on Palantir services just in the third quarter, which represents around a 35% increase year over year. However, for quarter 4 of 2021, Palantir looked to increase their average revenue per customer, specifically for their top 20 paying customers, from $41 million each to around $43 million each, which means that they have increased their overall revenues by around $40 million just from their commercial side by increasing the revenues of their existing customers, not even counting the customers that they have actually brought on. Palantir is rapidly expanding their commercial segment, which is fantastic news, and I already called that they were going to do this months ago, but it's nice to see that I was correct and that they are consistently growing their overall portfolio and expanding the types of customers that they do business with. For instance, we can see from this chart that they have radically increased and dramatically growing their customer base, specifically in their commercial segment, which is fantastic news. Eventually, investors are going to identify this fantastic trend because they are going to continuously do this, and this is going to cause the PLTR stock price to appreciate over time, which is fantastic for long-term growth investors such as myself. And while this is very impressive, specifically talking about the revenues, I actually want to hone in on their free cash flows, because this is the thing that is going to change what analysts currently predict for future PLTR stock price targets. Even from current analyst estimates, the stock is undervalued according to their stock price targets, but if they increase their overall free cash flows, those estimates are going to have to increase, which means that investors are going to have even more upside on this particular company. So it is fantastic news that they are increasing their revenues, but I am more impressed with their free cash flow models, because out of all the financial statistics that they are going to report on their upcoming earnings report, the most important financial metric or figure is going to be their free cash flows. The reason why this is so important is because a year ago, Palantir's management and analysts forecasted that Palantir would only break even for free cash flows in 2021. But right now, as we said earlier, we have projections of Palantir bringing in $400 million of free cash flows. So they are not breaking even, they have already exceeded that projection. But this is just the beginning. Palantir is continuously going to increase their free cash flows, which is going to move their PLTR stock price even higher because analysts will be forced to increase their price predictions, specifically if they use the FCF model to determine what Palantir stock is actually worth. The reason why the author of this article thinks that Palantir Technologies is going to beat their forecasted full year 2021 free cash flows of $400 million is because Palantir already secured 80% of this in quarter 3 of 2021. Because in quarter 3 of 2021, they brought in around $119 million worth of free cash flows, and that was around a 139% increase, which means for quarter 4 of 2021, Palantir Technologies would only have to rake in around $81 million of free cash flows. But because analysts currently project that quarter 4 free cash flows are going to be greater than quarter 3 free cash flows, we can actually anticipate a free cash flows beat of around $20 million. But the author of this article is even more bullish than that because he anticipates that the free cash flows for 2021 is going to come in at around $460 million, beating the estimates by analysts by around $60 million, because analysts are forecasting $400 million, while the author of this article has actually calculated $460 million. And if this is true, analysts should increase their overall stock price targets for the PLTR stock. What has helped Palantir achieve these free cash flows and even more revenues is specifically their Foundry platform, and especially their Foundry for Builders adoption. So if these metrics are accurate, and let's say that Palantir doesn't even have an earnings beat and they just match analyst price predictions, or they just match the revenue estimates or the projections regarding their free cash flows, what would this mean for the full year of 2022? Well, for 2022, Palantir is supposed to scale their business dramatically. For instance, their revenues for the full year of 2022 is set to come in at around $2.13 billion, which is absolutely insane. This would assume around a 35% free cash flow margin, which would almost double their free cash flows from the year prior, because Palantir for the full year of 2022 could bring in $745 million. This would mean that we could easily double the overall stock price in the span of just 12 months. And if you didn't know, doubling your money in the span of 12 months in the stock market is extremely hard to do. So if Palantir can give investors the opportunity to double their money, I would say this is a fantastic stock. But the news gets even better. Unlike other authors, he's actually saying that Palantir stock is very cheap to buy right now. And this does depend on what metric we are using. For an example, Palantir currently trades at around 17 times their revenues. So that means investors are paying a growth premium of around 17 times, which is pretty high. However, recently, this has dropped down to around 12 times. However, if we listen to the author of this article, he says based on the revenues and the PS ratio, it's a fantastic deal. Because as Palantir increases their free cash flows as well as their revenues, while the stock price is falling, so we can see here that the stock price and the PS ratio is falling, but the revenues are increasing, this gives us a fantastic buying opportunity to get into the stock right now. As soon as these metrics crossed at these X's right here, that means it's a fantastic buying opportunity. And if this trend continues to increase, it just gives us a better buying opportunity. While all of this news is extremely bullish, I do want to go over the risks of PLTR stock. For instance, what if Palantir does not beat their revenues, free cash flows, or even their forecasted earnings per share? Well, this would reflect very negatively on the stock price, and we actually could see the PLTR stock fall further. However, with that being said, the revenues and free cash flow guidance for the full year of 2021 as well as the full year of 2022 are very impressive, and Palantir is continuously scaling their business, and if they can capitalize on this momentum, it's only a a matter of time before the PLTR shares start to appreciate in price again. However, while the stock is low, or even if it drops lower, it's a fantastic buying opportunity. Now, risk management would say that we shouldn't over-allocate ourselves to one particular stock. For me personally, I do not allocate more than 5% of my portfolio weight to a single stock because that would be poor risk management. But you should always do what's best for your personal portfolio, but I would love to hear your thoughts down below. Remember to go and smash that like button right now, subscribe if you are new, and I'll see you in the next YT video.